However you are and whenever you are, welcome, good souls, to Paranormal Now. I'm Alan B. Smith. Join us as we traverse the cosmic highway of paranormal portals and tantalizing turnoffs. Tonight, joining me is Ron James of MUFON TV, and we'll be covering the gamut of ufology, evidence that Ron has recently reported on of UFO or UAP materials. So we'll get to that in just a minute. And of course, Ron has many interests, including paranormal, ghosts, I suppose metaphysical as well. So we'll cover it all because, as we all know on this show, all of these topics intersect. So it's going to be a fun night. Welcome. Strap into your space belt because it's going to be a ride tonight. In the last 30 minutes, you can call in the KGRA hotline, and that's 85-KGRA Live or 855-472-5483. It's kind of like linking your brain to our worldwide audience so we can hear your inquiring mental processes, but without the invasive technology like Neuralink or what else is coming down the pike. And this is our community now, right? I mean, COVID, this is what we do. We hang out digitally. And I'm so grateful that we have this because I've made so many friends, acquaintances, and connections during this period, despite the lack of, human connection that we're all dying to get back to, which we will in due time. I'm feeling it. Vaccines are going out in New York. Everybody is eligible for vaccination now. And my hope is really within the next few weeks, we'll be pretty darn close to normal. Now, I know there are some spikes apparently in the cases. I'm not quite sure what that means because I'm also hearing reports that some states' cases or deaths are going down. So I feel like we're in this kind of limbo purgatory right now, but we'll get through this on the other side together. Our guest tonight is Ron James. And again, if you want to speak with him, call the Paranormal radio app line. That's 855-KGRA Live or 855-472-5483. And as I've been saying for some time, in the next few months, I have some content that I will be putting out on my own YouTube channel, and that's Paranormal Pop. So if you go to youtube.com/Paranormal Pop, please subscribe and keep your eye open for new paranormal and ufological content coming your way. All right, so our guest tonight, Ron James, is a filmmaker, on-camera personality, writer, editor, researcher, content creator, and entrepreneur. He has won 19 national awards, including 4 EBE awards, the Telly Award, and the Aegis Award for Excellence in Broadcasting 4 times. He has created 7 feature-length documentaries and dozens of original series episodes. He produced the Citizen Hearing on Disclosure with Stephen Bassett, numerous other conferences, and hundreds of hours of other finished content in the extraterrestrial field. I like that you call it the ET field too, Ron. Not many people refer to that. James has also been involved at the highest levels of production for musical acts, such as Guns N' Roses, nice, the Smashing Pumpkins, one of my favorites from the 90s, the Beach Boys, Earth, Wind, and Fire, Kendrick Lamar, and many more. He has created 150 studio-based DVDs covering specialized topics. He has made over 250 TV commercials. He currently makes his own shows, including on MUFON TV, Bigger Questions, Space Time, MUFON Presents, and more. He maintains his own state-of-the-art independent production studio in Los Angeles. James is also the founder of MUFON Television, an online TV channel boasting the world's largest collection of commercial-free UFO-related material. Ron, welcome to Paranormal Now. How are you?
I'm like, I got to shorten my bio.
Yeah, it is. But you know what, though? For a thorough bio as that, it was quite succinct.
Yeah, I worked on it a little bit.
Have you ever read Stanton Friedman's full bio?
I have not.
I made the mistake of doing that live once on the show, and it took like 5 minutes to get through. So I said, well, I'll never have to do that again. And he was a good sport about it. Credentials do matter. But I think, above all else is commitment to a subject and the passion that one puts behind it. And, from what I can tell, having watched your programs on MUFON TV, I'm a card-carrying member. You seem to truly love this. You live, breathe this topic of extraterrestrials and UAP and UFO phenomena. Is that a fair assessment? And how did you get started down this path?
Well, it is a fair assessment, although I'm a little broader than that. I think that I've devoted most of my media career to the three bigger questions, as you say, the nature of reality, the life after death question, and the ET question. And I got into that stuff way back when I first got into doing video production. I was in Florida, and I'd get hired sometimes to go carry gear for the Discovery Channel when they're in town, or shoot hurricanes for the Weather Channel. And one day I was doing MTV Spring Break, and Girls Gone Wild was there, and I was working with all the crews. And you would think that would be the ultimate party day. I mean, what videographer wouldn't want to do that? But I got back to my house, and I was like, I didn't really get into this for those reasons. Right. And it just wasn't rewarding. And I picked up a copy of UFO Magazine, and Peter Gersten from Citizens Against UFO Disclosure from way back when, Citizens Against UFO Secrecy, he'd written an article about the reality of our reality. And I got so enthralled with that topic that I immediately just started making those kind of videos. And I went to the International Conference on Science and Consciousness. I interviewed all the big scientists that ended up in What the Bleep and The Secret and stuff like that. And I made my first Bigger Questions DVD series that you can still find out there somewhere. And then I was in Sedona, and I met Stephen Bassett from PRG, and he hired me to do the video production for his X conference. And I really never looked back after that. Since then, I've done tons of conferences, probably produced more hours of ET content than anybody, really, just because of the number of things that I've taped and the number of interviews. And I've still never seen a UFO, but I think this is the most important question facing humanity. And I approach it with a journalistic standpoint. I don't want to be a carnival barker, and I don't want to go out there and promote things that don't have a reasonable assumptive body of evidence. And I think humanity needs the answers, they need the truth, and they need to get it in a way that's not diluted with a bunch of just stuff that just makes it harder to believe. So that's what I've been doing. And that's why I aligned with MUFON. As many ups and downs as they've had, they're the world's largest organization dedicated to the scientific understanding of this phenomenon. They absolutely have been through a lot, and they've stood the test of time, despite missteps, unfortunate events happening. I know last year there was, an upset of sorts. We don't have to talk about it, but and it's of no one's fault within the organization, and somehow, right, it keeps trucking along. And why is that? Why does it survive? There are NICAP and other organizations before just didn't have the stamina and credentials. Is that what it is? Well, at the core of it all, I think that it's dedicated people. It's not the people you ever hear about. It's the people that really care about the topic, and they get out there and they want to be field investigators, and they want to be a part of understanding this. And so MUFON has succeeded in keeping an organization that has a national headquarters. It has a field training curriculum. It has a reporting infrastructure where stuff comes in, stuff gets researched, and stuff gets put back out to the public to disseminate. And so at the end of the day, it is still the organization that can deliver to people that care about that. And now we're expanding it to the point where MUFON really is the community for people that care about the topic. They have experiencer communities. We're rolling out new apps and all kinds of stuff through MUFON Television to bring just mainstream people into it that really just want to be a part of a club. And that's going to make it even cooler. It's going to appeal to the millennials. And as this information comes out, it's going to be really, really difficult for people to find community. And as humanity has to grapple with this knowledge that we're slowly getting, and it's going to intensify, people are going to look for other people to talk to about it. And they're going to go to their church, but where else do you go? And so a good, solid organization that can fulfill these needs and give a listening ear to people that are going through stuff and have had experiences and have curiosity, MUFON's actually growing into its potential.
Sure. Hey, Ron, is there a wire perhaps wrapped around the mic? I'm getting a little clicking, banging sound.
see if I can.
Oh, that sounds better already. All right. Oh, I lost your audio now, Ron. Yep, I can't hear you.
How about now?
Yep, got you back. All right.
Okay.
Very good. And now, of course, I lost my video. So there we go.
That's all right. I'm probably the last person you'd expect technical difficulties from, but
you're obviously, it's nice to be able to work with people who are tech savvy, because sometimes, people just don't know how to handle technical issues when they come up. They don't have the best microphones and camera, but you do, because this is what you do. And do you think what you do is beneficial to MUFON, and why is that with your programs?
Yeah, I came to MUFON with the idea to do MUFON television, and it was really because we wanted to set up a repository of where this information could be archived. You go to YouTube and you surf around, and you don't really know what you're getting. One thing might be a very journalistic piece, and something else might be complete malarkey, and you have to sift through a lot of stuff. So what I've done is I've taken a good body of work from seminars and conferences that have a scientific bent, all the way down to the shows that we're producing that aren't influenced by anybody. The mainstream media is not telling me what I could put on or what I can't put on. And so we're just trying to make honest programming that people can count on to give them some semblance of what's real. None of us really know everything, but there's anything you find on MUFON TV is going to be coming from people that have done credible research and aren't interested in chasing rumors and stories that don't have some semblance in reality.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier the contactees program. I know Kathleen Martin is central to that. Now, there was a time where MUFON wouldn't touch such a subject. And there are still people that critique MUFON and say MUFON's gone too far out there. They're covering these other tertiary subjects that may not be more of the nuts and bolts type of research you are known for, right? So is MUFON doing the right thing, or is MUFON going astray?
I think that the whole topic in general has these things that you simply can't deny. Now, you can't say, well, MUFON shouldn't be covering experiencers, because guess what? There's people out there having experiencers. There's people all over the world telling the same story. So to ignore it because of the fact that it might not have as much scientific credibility as, things that you see in the sky or some of these other things, MUFON's obligation, I believe, definitely MUFON TV's obligation, is to explore all the facets of this question. And so I think that criticism is really, it's not well founded. And you can say it, some people might believe it, but at the end of the day, we have to explore all of this, and we have to explore it with a scientific bent. If you read Kathleen Martin's report about the experiencer phenomenon, this is a very scientifically conducted report, just like everything that MUFON does. It lays out a lot of commonalities in these phenomena, and it also does it from a scientific investigative standpoint. So as long as that's what's happening, and there's not a lot of people jumping on with weird conjecture and trying to sell that to the public, then that research is important.
Do people call you RJ?
No.
Oh, I just noticed in your name it said RJ.
I didn't think it was going to show up. I just kind of typed it in real quick.
All right. I was like, all right, well we can roll with RJ.
People call me a lot of things, so.
Well, you do work with MUFON, and there are heavy critics out there, but that has to come with the territory, and you have to have thick skin when you're in this game. I mean, look, you have all these independent investigators that work under MUFON, right? Some of them are going to make mistakes. We're humans. And, sometimes, you get a lashing if it's the smallest mistake. But sometimes there are major blunders, right? And that happens in the field of ufology as well. Now, in the recent years, with the development of the ATIP program, TTSA, and now the UFO UAP task force that we hope to get a decent report from, do you think that the PR side of the government or military is no longer blundering in how they handle these things? Because if you remember, it was in the early 90s, we got the mogul as an excuse for Roswell. And then we got the final report. I I think that was 94. And then that changed again. And those are blunders from a PR standpoint, because it makes it quite obvious. If you keep changing the narrative in the story of what happened on Roswell in 1947, then clearly you're hiding something. Now it does appear that maybe they're being more forthcoming. Is that a fair assessment? And if not, or if so, what's your take on it?
Well, I think there's factions, and I think that that's becoming more and more evident. These guys are still stumbling all over themselves. The story that I just shared with you today that I did about the materials FOIA release, the FOIA release comes out. It's very specific as to what it's about. There's no question that they're referring to materials that came off of UAPs. But then the Pentagon jumps in and says, oh, no, that's not it. That's all materials that we're researching. And here's these reports about these materials that talk about what they may possibly do. Now, if the Pentagon is developing these materials, then wouldn't they know what they do? It's just like you start piecing the pieces together, and it's still one hand doesn't know what the other is doing. And then recently, I haven't shared it yet. It's going to be in the next report. Recently, another email surfaced where all of these different parties are trying to combine and get their story straight. And it's kind of a circus. And from what I understand from talking to Lou Elizondo and other people, that's really going on in the deepest levels of government. I never imagined for a minute that their religious implications would still be a problem, that there would be people inside the Pentagon that think there's a demonic presence to these things and really are fighting any kind of revelation about the presence because of that. It's insane. And so the infighting among these people is as big as it's ever been. And the public blunders, especially when you start collecting them and then connecting the dots, are just as bad as ever. The Roswell thing, Roswell Final Report, that was laughable. That was almost those guys saying, okay, here's what's really going on. Just read this report and believe just the opposite, because if you have any brains whatsoever, you're going to get it that we're lying through our teeth.
Right. Yeah. I'm going to put that article link in the Facebook, YouTube, and Periscope chat now. So if everybody wants to check that out. So can you tell us more about this meta material and the FOIA release? Because I think for years we've all suspected that debris was recovered at Roswell. How did that play out in real time from your perspective?
Well, there's a researcher named Anthony Regalia, and he's one of those guys that he's not at the conferences. He's not out there putting himself out. You can't even find a picture of him hardly. But he does some FOIA release stuff, and he finally, after years of harassing the DIA and lots of emails and threats of lawsuits and everything else, finally got a Freedom of Information Act request released that spoke to very specific items, which were things that were recovered by Defense Department officials that were from shot off material, crashed UAPs. It was very specific, and it's in the report that you're all invited to look at on our channel. But basically, they acknowledged that they had this stuff. They acknowledged that it was at Bigelow Aerospace, and they acknowledged that it was material that we couldn't even back engineer. And so there's 154 pages of reports about this stuff, what it does, what it might do. One of the materials was called nitinol, and oddly enough, that's a memory-retaining, shape-shifting alloy. Now, that's been around since the 50s, and it's used today everywhere. So on the surface, it seems as though, well, okay, that was something that was invented. But oddly enough, it was invented by a guy in a naval weapons research laboratory a few years after Roswell. And even though it's been around, it still has a lot of these same
properties. I just lost your sound.
Okay, there we go. That's better. Sorry about that. So the idea that, like the Corso book, Day After Roswell, a lot of people don't believe Corso specifically, but the story itself that if some sort of unknown material was discovered, it would eventually be ported to private industry, and then whatever research results came would come out in advances of technology. That's not far-fetched. And the fact that a shape-shifting memory-retaining alloy came out a few years after Roswell from a naval weapons lab suggests that it's possible that was material that came from somewhere else that went through that system. And so nitinol is one of the materials they talk about that has a so-called history.
Now, I just really quick, I want to interject. When we say reverse engineered, that doesn't necessarily mean that we reverse it identically, right? It could be more of an inspired offshoot of the original recovered material.
Oh, absolutely. The one thing that's really common among all these materials is that we can kind of figure out what they do, and maybe we've been able to produce some stuff that's of reasonable facsimile, similar properties, but we don't really know how the stuff was manufactured. We don't know how to make it. A lot of the alloys and the stuff that's in it are combinations that we don't have the technology to make. And a lot of people are saying that the outer space is one of the places you'd have to go in a zero-G environment to manufacture this stuff. So the other materials that they talk about, like liquid glass metal, and some of the others, have all these different types of properties that in the reports they're talking about what they might do. They might be able to slow down light, bend light. They might be able to be used in invisibility technology. They might be able to be used to lower the amount of energy it takes to store data. So here's this whole report talking about these materials and what they might do, when the Pentagon is saying, oh, no, there are materials, but then why does the Pentagon know what they may or may not do? So they kind of back themselves into a corner just in the way they try to address it. And the fact of the matter is, it's very clear when you read between the lines and you look at what's being said officially, they found this material somewhere and they don't know what it is.
So you have this material. Now, the Roswell material, if my understanding is correct, when they try to burn it, it wouldn't burn, right? You crumple it up, it retracts to its original state. But also, if you hit it, it was super hard. You couldn't dent it either. That seems to be a factor that's missing, right?
Yeah, and again, it's technology that they don't understand. So as they're looking at a compound, they can analyze the metallurgy. They can analyze different aspects of it and what it does. Even a piece of mylar, you can roll it into a ball, it'll come back to a certain extent. So pulling some information out of the samples and getting it to mimic some of its properties is not that far of a stretch, but they don't have anything that does everything that the Roswell materials suggest.
Right. Okay, so that's one crash, right? But we know that there are multiple crash reports and multiple material specimens that are apparently out there, have been tested. Maybe Bigelow has something. We know Linda Moulton Howe had a material that she was trying to test that came from Art Bell, passed to her. Are there any materials out there that you're aware of that we should be trying to test right now?
If there's material out there, it's being tested. They've got a very elaborate mechanism for getting their hands on this stuff. Nothing happens without the group that's managing this information being in on it, being there, and getting what needs to be taken. You're not going to have a UFO crash in a field in Zimbabwe, and our guys aren't going to be there, if you want to call them our guys, aren't going to be there collecting. So the surveillance is very, very tight, and if it's out there and it's been recovered by basically the same group, fringes of the same group, and it's being taken into a system that's been in place for a long time. And so it's not like, your kid is going to be walking one day and find a piece of a flying saucer and maybe we should take it to the local lab. That's going to be the exception, not the rule. And you do hear stories about there being some questionable materials out there, but you don't really hear stories about them being proven to be something we can't explain.
Right. I don't usually take chat this soon, but I have a chat here from Ojo Aja. Hi all, which one is most interesting, catching the UFO or Philadelphia experiment? And I'm asking you now, Ron, because of the topic that we're discussing. Are there experiments that we are aware of, top secret experiments, that actually connect to technology recovered from UFOs?
Well, obviously none of that is public, and none of us can really say for sure. But the fact that you really have to consider is, if it's out there, a very sophisticated group of people have been studying it. So technology that is able to do some of the things that they say these spaceships can do, which is traverse time, space-time continuums, all that kind of stuff. The biggest, brightest minds on the planet have got their hands on this material and these machines, and they're going to do things, and they're going to do experiments, and they're going to try stuff, and they're going to try to reverse engineer it, and they're going to flip every switch to see what it does. So it's not a stretch that some of these things, like the Philadelphia experiment, could very well have come from a piece of technology like a cloaking device or some kind of something they found on some crash debris and figured out what it does and tried to make it work.
All right. Well, let's hold it right there, Ron. We're going to come right back on the other side of this break. You're listening to Paranormal Now on KGRA Radio. If you want to find out more about this show and others, go to kgradb.com. And I have so many more questions for Ron. We are going to cover it all: metaphysics, extraterrestrials, UFOs, and maybe even ghosts. So hang in there. We'll be right back on the flip side.
Mainstream media's most wanted. KGRAradio.com.
Welcome back to Paranormal Now. This is Alan B. Smith, your most grateful host. Taking us out of the break was music by Septembrio. If you want to find out more about Septembrio, go to Septembrio, spelled with a y.com. All right, we're back with RJ.
That's funny.
Ron
I won't do that
James.
again.
That's all right.
I'll fix it on the next break.
Yeah. I was almost messaged you to do that, but whatever. We're fine. People know who you are. And if you want to find out more about Ron James, just go to MUFONtelevision.com /spacetime, or you can go to MUFONtelevision.com /insider. And in fact, Ron, I do want to ask you, of all the shows that you've done, is there any one interview that really stuck out?
You know, I've done so many, but I think the interview with Lou Elizondo that I did is so striking that I've only put it out in bits and pieces. There's some stuff that he said that he probably doesn't really want out there, and there'll be a time and a place for it, but that is absolutely the most striking interview for sure.
Okay. So do you think Lou is the straw that broke the camel's back?
I think the camel's back has been broken by a lot of straws. I think that Lou did, even in the way he rolled this out, was probably part of a lot more organized thing than it's led on to be. And he's doing his job and his role. It's debatable, and he won't give you a straight answer, yes or no. Rather, he's still working. But at the end of the day, I have so much respect for this guy because of what he's done and the lines that he's had to straddle, and the fact that he has taken upon himself at great risk to, everything, to get out here and be that guy that is doing what he's doing. And he'll be the first one to tell you he's not a whistleblower. In fact, he would be insulted if you labeled him as a whistleblower. He is a guy that is disseminating information that he thinks people need to know in a manner that he has been cleared in some way to be able to do.
Isn't that why people are so upset with him or go after him? Because they actually want him to be a whistleblower.
Yeah, but it's a tough road. And for Lou is a soldier and a patriot. He's made commitments and he's made oaths. And it is not, he will tell you, because I hit him with that. I said, Lou, there's a phrase out there that says, if you know it, you owe it. If you know something that humanity deserves to know. Don't you have a moral obligation to put it out there? And he's like, no, that's crap. I have a moral obligation to honor my oaths. And I am going to take orders and do what I'm told to do by other people that know even more than me. And that is the nature of the military, the nature of the structure of even the intelligence community. And it's just how things work. And so as much as we'd like to go, come on, just tell us, at the end of the day, he's not going to do it. And I think the people that give him a hard time for that, they don't understand that there's a lot of moving parts that even us in the UFO field don't get. I used to be really, really angry at the way I see this stuff going, the way I see the rollouts happening, the way I see shows on mainstream media that are scratching at the surface, but we all know the story beneath the story. But we're playing to 7 billion people. We're not playing to the 40,000 or so hardcore ufologists that know more than most people. And this rollout is for them. It's not for us. So we're not going to get everything we want from the way it's happening, but it is happening, and it's happening in a way that all of humanity can absorb. And so it's very frustrating as somebody who understands the stuff, who gets in on the conversations and knows, like I'll watch something on A&E on history, and they're doing a great job, but they're disseminating to the masses. I watch Unidentified, and I know so much about the story behind the story, and it's frustrating that it's not getting out there. And I understand that, but it's getting out there in a way that is for the whole of humanity to absorb. And so that information and the disbursement of it is being managed. And at least we're seeing some progress. We need to be happy about it.
I'm very happy about it. I think the past few years have been extraordinary. It's been more progress since probably the 50s with Project Blue Book. It's just phenomenal to me how forthcoming the government has been, even though it's still guarded, even though it's just the tip of the iceberg. It's close as we've gotten to those sit-down press conferences, in the 50s where they spoke about UFOs or flying saucers at the time. And so for me, that's encouraging because, there was this sort of retraction from the government, and you can blame it on the Condon report or what have you. Though I think the Condon report was just a tool, used by those in intelligence. But here we are, and the tide is changing. But, we're talking about these materials and getting them tested. The thing is, aren't you tired of waiting for, props to Bigelow, right, for the work that he's done. But aren't we tired of waiting for the billionaire or millionaire to do it, or the government to do it? Isn't there a place, a future for a nonprofit organization, maybe MUFON, maybe something else, that gets the funding and hires the scientists and can actually, because every time someone wants, James Fox, right? Every time he wants to get something tested, he's scraping to get that money together. If it's a Bigfoot hair, right? You got to scrape together and get that money. And it just drags this whole process out. And then you don't get a really comprehensive study of any one or any of these phenomena. Shouldn't we be crowdfunding in some way? What's your take on all that?
Well, I think that if something comes forth that's genuinely worth being tested, it'll be tested. I worked a lot with Roger Lear, especially later on in his life before he passed away. And he had all these implant things that he'd pulled out and that he suspected were carbon nanofiber, and he could never get the money to test them. And at the end of the day, just deciding if something's made of carbon nanofiber or not is not a stretch. And then when those materials went to John Rao after they left Roger after he passed away, they still never got tested. But the fact is, if you have something that is that striking that it needs to be tested, then resources are going to come up. And I agree with you. Crowdfunding is a great way to do it. MUFON has its own labs. If somebody's really got something, and it has to go through phases. You say you send a sample to MUFON for testing. They're going to do a basic test of it, and then they're going to move in. Mass spectrometry is not an expensive test to at least figure out what something's made of. And most of these samples don't even make it past that, because if it's something that can be made on Earth, that is, even if it's an unusual combination of alloys, it tends to stop dead in the water right there. If you remember Art's Parts, Okay, that was some very unusual stuff, and it made the rounds, and it's still out there. And at the end of the day, they really couldn't figure out how it was manufactured. And so, that's an example of something that made it into the public vernacular. Everybody knew about it, and somehow or another, it found its way to getting the testing it deserved. So, and then of course, anything that pops up from a UAP crash, that's getting tested and analyzed by all kinds of people, and we don't know anything about it.
Right, but if you had whether it's a university or a nonprofit organization, a full-time funded scientific laboratory where people are on salary, right? They're there to do the work, not to be called in on occasion or paid, a stipend to come in and do some work or volunteer, but like a staff in a laboratory that their full-time job is to investigate the paranormal, including UFOs, and that would not force all of us, but I think it would encourage the public when they get samples or things happen. They know, send it to that place, right? And if you structure it so that it's like a watchdog group, that it's transparent, so that we can trust it as a public, wouldn't that sort of expedite the mainstream conversation about all of these topics?
Well, Robert Bigelow tried to do that with NIDS, and it basically got to a certain point and it didn't. And I don't want to sound pessimistic, but I could pretty much tell you that from my standpoint, if such an organization were created and existed, it would most likely be created and exist on behalf of the people that are hiding all this stuff anyway. And if they didn't create it, fund it, and put it into motion, they would infiltrate it immediately and make sure that everything that was discovered the information was guarded. So at the end of the day, that's a tough call. It would be nice to have it like, some kind of League of Heroes where all these scientists were standing by waiting for a piece of a flying saucer to show up. But, it sounds like it'd be a lot of bored scientists trying to figure out what to do. Because if there's material out there, anybody, if you've got material that is worthy of being tested, bring it forth. Bring it to MUFON, bring it to make a YouTube video, and it will get tested. But the fact of the matter is that stuff's pretty scarce. It's pretty hard to come by. The real thing.
Well, sure. I'm speaking very broadly here, not just UFOs, right? All kinds of paranormal. And you're right. I mean, Bigelow did experimented with that possibility in the 90s.
It's funny. I worked with New Dominion Pictures. They make True Detectives and a bunch of other stuff. This was years ago. We shot a pilot for a show that I created called Paranormal Labs, and it was exactly that. The whole concept of the show was that there was a whole team of researchers and stuff that did exactly that. They got dispersed to areas where paranormal stuff happened, and they had specialists for everything. We couldn't sell the show, but at the end of the day, I mean, a real Paranormal Labs would be fantastic, and maybe crowdfunding it would be a possible thing.
Well, crowdfunding / shareholders, right? Because any business has to answer to their shareholders, and so if you have, and that's why I say the billionaire or millionaire, that's nice, it's helpful, but they are only accountable to themselves. Whereas if you have an organization now, like the Curse of Oak Island, right? They get more funding because of the show itself and the popularity of the show, and so that keeps the dig going. And so this sounds like your concept.
Yeah, but it's also making the dig take 12 seasons. Come on, man! It's true. Only 90 feet down. We live in an age where we could dig a lot of big holes. Let's just get it done, guys. But anyway,
no. I feel you. Like I enjoy, the. Occasional Spanish, bullion coin showing up, but it's like I said from like season 3, I was like, why don't you just dig this whole thing out? I don't understand why we're poking holes here and then a little dig here. Find the money pit. Like, come on, just go for it. But I think your show, your concept is a good one because that would mean there's advertising money coming in, and that would give the corporation an incentive for you to be successful in your scientific research and testing of materials, going out into the field. So I think you should give it a shot, Ron, and I'm sure.
You know, one of the reasons that I don't do mainstream TV, I don't want to show on the Travel Channel or be on the History Channel, because you have to get through the watchdogs. There is nothing in its purest form that's ever going to make it. And God bless the people working it. I know a lot of people in Hollywood. My studios are there, and I work with a lot of people, and I understand what's going on. I've helped History promote their shows, the Skinwalker Ranch and Unidentified, and even Project Blue Book when it was out a couple years ago. And, you know, I know all these people, and they really care about the topic, but it's no secret that every media outlet has intelligence officers that are managing the information they can put out. And when you're dealing with these hot topics like unidentified, you're dealing with ancient aliens, those guys are not just writing these shows and spitting them out there. They're going through the gatekeepers. And in order to get media out that avoids the gatekeepers, you can't play in that league. And it's not that there's anything wrong with these people, and a lot of them are really good people. It's a misconception that they're not. Mm-hmm. But it is a machine, and there are people in control of that machine, and there's just no avoiding it. And so getting something that is, if you were to find a piece of crash debris and you got it to the TV show Paranormal Labs, and they analyzed it, and they proved absolutely definitively that this thing had to originate from some kind of extraterrestrial technology. You couldn't even manufacture it on Earth. The odds of that getting to the audience, very, very slim.
Do you think there would be interference?
Oh yeah, it would have to fit the narrative, because right now the people that have been managing this information all the way back to, say, MJ12, when there was an organization formed to manage this information, mm-hmm. The people that have been doing it are running the show. And although we're getting more information now, part of it is because they can't keep it a secret for too much longer, because pretty soon there's going to be private space flight. Somebody's going to land on Mars and find out what's really going on there. The cat's has to get out of the bag, and they're still holding on so tight, trying to manage it. And so through TTSA, through the media, especially A&E, these people are controlling the narrative. And if something that you're doing is not controlling the narrative, you're not getting out there. You're not going to be on Ancient Aliens with your stuff, even though those guys have really done groundbreaking work. There's no cowboys are going to be allowed to ride their horse out of the television in your living room.
Well, but if we're talking about reality show style, and you're on site and you're recording on video, and you're there, or whoever else is there as a witness, as a host, and to receive the sample, the results of the samples. That's documented, right? And you have witnesses, people involved with the show. So that would require, not just pulling a plug, but telling you or whoever else is involved in the show to not talk about it. And I don't know if they'd be able to pull that off in this day and age. I mean, the world of entertainment.
No, it just requires a producer that's taking orders from other people to switch the sample and then switch it back after it comes back from the lab. I mean, there's a ton of ways to do it. But the fact of the matter is, we're not going to get any information through official sources that it has not been determined by a committee that we are going to receive. And that's just, as much as I think it stinks, it's the way it is. And yes, as somebody just said, shout out to the History Channel. Yeah, I mean, really, they have done a lot, but they're still constrained to a certain point.
Well, you're killing my hope here, Ron.
Just ride the wave, because here's the other side of that, though, mm-hmm. Alan, and this is something that I know once I lay this out for you guys, you're going to get it in spades. There's people that have been managing this information and keeping it a secret from everybody. But they also know that there's a certain amount of people on this planet that really care and really do the research and really do the digging. And so at the same time, we're so mad at them for keeping it a secret. They have thrown us the breadcrumbs from day one. These same people that are hiding this information have made sure that if you want to know what's going on, you're going to have to sift through some disinformation. You're going to have to sift through a lot of BS, but you're going to find these nuggets of truth, and you're going to start connecting the dots. And so the truth about this information is available to anybody who wants it. It's been distributed to anybody who wants to do the digging and do the research. And I got to say, it's kind of cool that these people that are hiding all this stuff have had enough courtesy to really make the information and the truth available to the people that really, really want it. And so that's why we know these things that we know. That's why we have this body of evidence that points to the truth about Roswell. That's why we have these different stories that come together that give us an idea of the narrative, the secrets of how this information was managed, the stuff that happened at Area 51, the Bob Lazars, the research that we know about. The information has been distributed. It just hasn't been put on a poster for everybody to see. But these same guys that have been hiding it from the entire planet have been kind of cool in that they've thrown some tidbits to the people that really want to know. And so not a lot of people understand that, but I really believe that's what has happened since this thing really started becoming a thing.
Well, there's what we don't know and what we don't know. Intelligence is a game of chess, and there are assets and pieces of information that they can't divulge because it could be the undoing of some other agenda that is in our best interest that we are unaware of. But that's me giving them the benefit of the doubt.
Well, there's always that. Plus, there's the fact that maybe we're giving them credit for knowing a lot more than they actually know. These guys may be in cahoots with aliens. Maybe we have secret space programs and bases on other planets, but, maybe not. And
who are these guys?
My personal theory, from what I've understood in my own research, is that sometime around the Roswell crash, a group such as MJ-12 was convened to figure out how to manage this information. And the people that are doing it now are an offshoot of that. They went completely underground, completely black. They answer to nobody. They're not officially part of any government entity, and they are the ones that are running the show. There's even speculation that even the big defense contractors are not part of this, that there's actually a whole defense contract type of infrastructure working with this technology, and that even the guys at Skunk Works and the guys at Grumman, they don't have all this stuff. They don't have all this information because it's being managed in such a way that it is completely underground, almost like the breakaway civilization that Richard Dolan talks about. Mm-hmm. But not, and I don't know how far that goes, and I don't want to speculate because that's all it is. Do we have secret spaceships? Well, we probably have some kind of secret spacecraft. Yeah. But at the end of the day, that information and the management of the information, it's all been completely ported into an area of non-accountability. Right. Private industry, black budgets, plausible deniability. And one of the reasons that they're starting to roll out the secrets is because all the people that were involved in the beginning of this cover-up, they're all starting to pass away. And, at the end of the day, you can't have the people that are accountable for the biggest deception in human history be standing there when the lid gets blown off it. They've got to be gone.
So it's about patience.
It's about patience. It's about human evolution. It's about technology. It's like, say we have the technology for free energy that somehow or another we got from an alien spacecraft. Mm-hmm. You don't think they're going to let every last drop of oil get used up by the biggest economic engine running the planet before they roll that out? It's all part of the same thing. It's, there's a governance on the planet. Aliens probably have some say into what information is going to get put out and when. They have their own reasons for not wanting to talk to us. And so it's all part of the same deception, and it's all being managed by the same group of people. You call them the Illuminati, you call them whatever. There is an elite group that is making broader decisions on the planet, and I think they're all connected, and all the decisions and all the facets of it are all connected.
We were talking about conspiracy theories before the show started, and I think we all agree that it's important to entertain conspiracy theories. How do you discern a conspiracy theory from an outrageous, completely unfounded conspiracy theory? Because a lot of people will accuse us in ufology for being nuts. So just thinking what we're thinking is just all in our imagination. We're projecting what we want onto even documents that are received by FOIA requests or the Twining memo, right? That we're just sort of projecting our own idea of what this is. So how do we defend ourselves? And then how do we also separate ourselves from conspiracy theories that are not very well grounded?
I spent a certain amount of time in my early production career going down those rabbit holes. I made a couple of videos with David Icke. I used to listen to Alec Jones, and I would believe a lot of this stuff. And finally, it came down for me to the point of, what do you believe the true human nature is? Are we truly that evil? You, me, and all the other people would have to come together to do these things. And I don't believe that for a minute. I think, and to me, that's what really is my censor for whether or not I'm going to believe a conspiracy theory, is how evil is it? And are we really being controlled by people that are that evil? And I just don't believe it. I don't believe that the people that would do some of these darker, horrible things are prevailing over human nature and the majority of the population. I just don't believe there's enough evil in the world and enough evil people with that much power to perpetrate some of these broader and more far and complex conspiracy theories. So for me, that became the guide, as I started to really understand the good in humans and the good in humanity. And that told me that we're not just being manipulated by some dark force that wants to stick nanobots in us and turn us into robots. Now, there might be forces out there that have that agenda for humanity, and some of them might be terrestrial or not. But are they actually going to be able to pull it off? I generally don't think so.
Well, I think that. Oh no, go ahead.
Oh no, that's that.
Well, I think the trick here is there one overarching agenda that all of these people are involved in, or like you said, I think that there are different people in power with different agendas, and there isn't one overarching agenda. There are people that have nefarious agendas.
Sure,
but they are not the sole owners or landlords of the planet. And so it's not so simple. I think there are different factions that are, bumping heads and have different ideas of what they like. I mean, look, someone like Jeff Bezos, just as a single human being, has enormous influence with just his money and his assets alone. And that's just one person. What about all the other people that have power grabs, right? I mean, anyone who's worked in the business world, or look at Hollywood and producing, right? I mean, there's power grabs by all kinds of different people. And then mixed in with those people, like you said, there are good people, right? So I think I agree with you. It's complicated. It's more complicated than we think. And therefore, because it's complicated, it's hard to overly simplify a problem. And I think that's where conspiracy theories, where they trend, because we all want an answer. We all want to know that's the person, right? That's the problem. And then it makes it easier for us to process, because then we can just focus our energy, blame it on this thing. And it kind of, in a sense, it kind of relieves your stress. Because I've been through that phase of feeling like anxious all the time, because I'm digesting all this like stuff, and I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. Someone just give me an answer, right? And I think that's where the danger can be. But yes, I have faith in humanity. I do think we need to evolve as a species, because
absolutely, that's why they won't talk to us. That's the key reason. Yeah. We have to self-determine to a conclusive point. Right. There's a video on YouTube.
Ron, let's hold it right there. We'll talk about the video when we get back. We have this hard break coming up right now. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. We have a great guest, Ron James from MUFON TV. If you want to find out more, I'll put the link in the chat, and you can check that out. Please go to MUFONtelevision.com/spacetime. This is Alan B. Smith of Paranormal Now. We'll be back after the second and last break. We'll see you on the Inverted Upside Down.
I try to capture how I feel and tell you the whole truth, but there's too much to be said, so I just leave you small clues. But now I'm bearing my soul, and my soul loves you. Tell me last things, tell me last things, tell me last things.
Mainstream media's most wanted. KGRAradio.com.
You're lost in a bad way, starting to let go, gone too far the wrong way, can take it all back now. Been lost in a bad way. I've gotta let you go. You're supposed to be so close to me. You're mostly echoes to me, yeah.
Welcome back to Paranormal Now. This is Alan B. Smith. If you want to find out more about our bumper music tonight, please check out Septembrio, spelled with a Y, septembrio.com. Michael 8 has not been on the show for a while, so I think we'll get him back on. He's a great guy, great musician, and you can find his music anywhere you download your music on your cell phone, iPhone, Android, computer, or soon to be Neuralink. Thanks to some of our tech billionaires. All right, coming back now with Ron James from MUFON TV. Ron, if you had the opportunity to plug into Neuralink and have a chip implanted in your brain, would you do it?
Well, I think that people aren't really up to speed on what Neuralink is supposed to be doing. It's more right now in its infancy. It is more of an internal body mechanism to help you kind of work around injuries and things that happen to your body. But, sure, we're going to be to the point like that show on Netflix called The Feed, where everybody has a little implant that they can jack into a system, and it's going to be hard to resist. At the end of the day, a lot of people think we're already jacked into a system like that, and that's what the whole nature of our reality is. And I happen to think that makes a lot of sense. So, would you do it? I think the question is really going to be, are you going to have a choice?
If are you saying that our nature of reality as it is already a sort of a matrix?
Absolutely. If you look at the way the physical universe works, even by traditional physics, it is algorithms in a computer program with artificial matter created by atoms vibrating a certain frequency interpreted by the brain to create the illusion of something solid, right? So we're absolutely living in a simulation. And so it's not a stretch to understand that we're going to get to the point where we can create simulations within simulations. Even if you don't subscribe to the idea of the Matrix, like we're all just some kind of human with a jacked into the system, the way the universe functions and the way our physical bodies and the way our brain interacts with the signals that create the reality and the way they're proving that we have influence over our reality points absolutely to the fact that we're living in a simulation. But reality itself is by its very nature a simulation. And so when you look at what physics is telling us now, the laws of physics are nothing but an algorithm. The rules of mathematics that make things function, a very simple sacred geometry, pi. And so it's all algorithms. It's illusionary matter that's not really here. The headphones you have on your head, it's like they said in the Matrix, you don't actually think those are headphones, do you? And so it's not even really a question anymore. The question really becomes who's running it and why.
An analogy would be then plugging in to a false reality within a false reality is sort of like opening up a file folder, and within the file folder, there's another file folder, and then you open up that file folder, and there's another file folder. So if that's the case, then we might already be several simulations deep, Ron, which is kind of
there was a movie called The 13th Floor where that actually was the story. I see Eugene, he's asking about sacred geometry, and Eugene, sacred geometry, it's it sounds like it's a metaphysical woo-woo thing, but it's really not. It's all about math, and it boils down to the fact that the Fibonacci sequence and pi, these very basic sets of mathematical formulas and measurements repeat themselves through nature exclusively. And in fact, everything is built on like two formulas: the way a flower blooms, the geometry that it creates, the way complex systems work, the way a nautilus shell forms. It's all based on these very basic mathematical principles that are referred to as sacred geometry.
Well, the very fact that fractals exist is confounding, right? I mean, we take it for granted. We see the imagery and the expressions and graphic arts and mathematic expressions, but it's insane. It's literal infinity.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that we in a sense, we can kind of comprehend it. I know we say it's incomprehensible, but in a sense we can. And that, I think, reflects to the nature of reality itself, because what we're able to do is reflect on our own nature. I think I said this in a recent show too. Like Buddha said, you start breaking yourself down to who is the I, right? So you have your body, and then you have your arm, and then you have your nail, then you have your cell, and then you keep going lower into the atoms, and then lower, and then there's no I. It's just bits and pieces that make up this whole thing. And Lynn McTaggart discusses that in The Field. And so here's the thing: if we are in a matrix, within a matrix, so when we break it down and we look at the smallest bits of energy, little kind of round waves, then isn't that the limit?
Well, I think that I saw an episode of Star Trek one time, and she had gone back in time, and she was with Leonardo da Vinci, and he knew of the existence of her shuttlecraft, and he wanted her to explain it to him. And it was very interesting what she said. She's like, well, a bird is intelligent and has its allotment of processing power, but it's never going to understand how to paint the pictures that you paint. I think that we have a certain ability to comprehend up to a certain point. We can come up with some pretty good theories about the nature of reality and how it's all happening. We can come up with some pretty good theories about what consciousness exists beyond that reality and what the true state of energy and matter may be within our universe. But we hit the hard roof when we start trying to struggle with the answer of, but yeah, where did that come from? And I think by design, we're just incapable of going past that. We're very limited creatures. And so we're puzzling our way out of this matrix. It's a very interesting thing to see. There's more and more science that is happening that is pointing to it. Just recently, there's some new videos on YouTube where Elon Musk and Neil deGrasse Tyson talking to Larry King about what Elon Musk says. Elon's convinced that we're living in a simulation, and he says that if you throw a dartboard at all of the different versions of reality, the odds of you hitting a base reality are practically zero. And the physicists from back in the day, Amit Goswami, Bill Tiller, these guys that talk about multiverses existing and possibilities existing, only collapsing into reality when they're brought about. It's all pointing to the idea that this is not a cage, but it's an enclosure for us to serve whatever purpose we're serving. Yeah. And where we go after that, I don't know. I subscribe to the idea that this is we're here to learn. We're here to evolve our spiritual energy into a defined being, so that when we go someplace where we have more freedom, like maybe you end up with the freedom to go and create your own universe. Well, do you want to hand that to a kid that's going to splatter the living creatures against the wall? No, you got to be an evolved being before you can manage that kind of power. And so I think that's why we're here.
And maybe that's why ETs are keeping their distance.
Well, yeah, because we're still pretty bad players in the neighborhood. The things that are happening on this planet are absolutely insane. And there's no way they're going to let that energy into the universe. I made a video with Linda Moulton Howe. I used to have a spaceship at my studio, actually a physical spaceship that I built. And we sat down in it and we talked about, what's going on with this Galactic Federation? What is the possibility of that? And you can find the video on YouTube. Just Google Ron James, Linda Moulton Howe. It's only 12 minutes long, but I kind of lay out the theory of different factions in the galaxy that are part of a loose alliance. They do these planet projects. They raise these species, and there's a lot of different outcomes. And so, there could be human planets where they're being raised for food. There could be human planets where they're being raised for the energy of their thoughts and the energy of their spirits. There could be soul farms. There could be a whole lot of things that the human is good for. But I think once a certain civilization shows a spark of being able to consciously evolve, then there's a general agreement that it's hands off, and this particular version of humanity on this particular planet has earned the right to self-determine. And I think that's what happened here. And I think that there's still a lot of factions that have their different agendas for an outcome on planet Earth, and they tinker here and there, and they interfere when they can, just like a typical soap opera. But at the end of the day, we're self-determining, and if we get it, then we're going to be welcomed into a galactic family. And if we don't, we're going to destroy ourselves, and we're going to get plowed under like, cosmic manure. So at the end of the day, it's up to us. I hope we do it.
Yeah, but if you can't get the majority of the public on board with even the possibility that aliens are visiting us, we've got a long way to go.
Because you don't have to get them on board with that. It's not about whether aliens are visiting us or not. It's about whether we are going to evolve in a common sense manner as the spiritual beings that we are. Aliens don't play a big role in humanity accomplishing what it needs to accomplish for the aliens to consider us worthy of walking among them. Mm-hmm. What has to happen? It's all the same things. It is not like, well, if you want the to be accepted into the galactic family, you have to treat each other better. You have to quit destroying your planet. You have to find a place of love and quit spending all your money on weapons and destroying each other and allowing so much brutality. Those aren't things that you have to do just to get the attention of the aliens. It's things we need to do anyway. And I think if we do those things, we accomplish those things, then that is going to open those doors. So you don't have to say, hey, if we want to meet the aliens, we have to do this. We have to do it anyway. So you don't have to sell aliens to the public. You just have to sell human evolution.
Right, but it's a major paradigm shift. And I think for some, it would be a psychological schism. I think most of us can probably handle it, but for some, it would be an absolute breakdown. And so what I'm saying is that if you can't even handle the idea the extraterrestrials are coming, I mean, forget about what you're talking about. I mean, you're talking about deep metaphysical, reality crashing, alteration in perception.
I don't want this to sound condescending in any way to anybody out there, but I puzzle every day about why people are not deep in contemplation about these questions. I can't think of anything else. When I got into the media career, I'm like, gee, do I want to shoot Girls Gone Wild, or do I want to figure out the nature of the universe? Do I want to understand why I'm here? Do I want to understand what it all means? And the idea that we've created this machine on this planet where people can get distracted into the most ridiculous minutia. What is Kim Kardashian wearing? My gosh, who cares? At the end of the day, really, I don't understand why people are not spending more time contemplating their own existence. And I can't change that. But on the other side of it, we are making a positive evolution, but we're also up against, forces that would like to see us not make that positive evolution. So it's up to us, it's up to the individual, and it's up to everybody to understand that this is a journey. It's not just this place where we hang out and destroy stuff and each other.
And just a heads up to everybody listening, in about 15 minutes, stand by. We're going to open up the phone lines, the Paranormal Radio app lines, and those numbers are 85-KGRA Live or 855-472-5483. So stand by for the queue. In about 15 minutes, we'll open up those lines. Are you ready, Ron?
Oh, yeah.
Now, I do want to get back to, you're going to go somewhere with that video before the break, but I do want to add this. So I was watching an interview with Michio Kaku, and I think it was Stephen Colbert. I'm not sure. And I've always respected Michio Kaku because, not that I don't respect Neil deGrasse Tyson. I love Neil deGrasse Tyson. But Michio Kaku always seems so much more open to the idea that extraterrestrials could not only exist, but might even actually be here. We just can't see them, right? And in this interview, this was only about a week ago, he made that kind of snide remark that I haven't heard in a long time. He said, talking about people having abductions with aliens, and said, well, if you're abducted, next time it happens, grab a piece of something and bring it back with you. And I'm thinking, hold up now. Like this is extraordinarily intelligent man, and he is laying the most base and unintelligent debunker argument that you can possibly imagine. And I keep thinking, why would he say something like that? Because obviously, if someone's kidnapping you, they don't want you to take anything, so they're going to stop you from taking something, right? It doesn't take much to figure that out. So what's going on here? Why is Michio speaking in these terms?
Well, this is a guy, highly accomplished scientist, who has always been a bit of a rock star. He's always been willing to walk out to the edge and flirt with it, but even he's got to draw the line, okay? So the problem with the experiencer phenomenon is not that it's not happening, it's that it's happening to some people, and then there's some people out there that are just crazy. Okay, we just have to face that. And it's really, really hard for him to speak on that. So he's got himself a nice little place where he can stop and just make a little comment and get out of it. But we know with the research that's happening about the experiencer phenomenon, not only what's happened at MUFON, but what's also happened with Ray Hernandez and his whole group, where they studied experiencers from a broad spectrum, not just people with alien encounters, but people with near-death encounters, people with other types of ghostly encounters. And they found, common, not so much common threads in the experiences themselves, but common threads in the mechanisms that may be making those things happen. So it is a science, but it's a science in its infancy. And I can understand why Michio might just want to make a joke out of that, because you can't wade into it from a scientific standpoint without having a really long time to talk about it. And so it's easier to poo-poo it away right now. But at the end of the day, I suspect that we're going to find that a lot of these experiencer phenomenon are occurring because of interdimensionality and other ways of experiencing different realities. And then you say, well, is the abductee in every case physically removed from his house, or are there times where they're ethereally removed? Are the aliens that you see at the foot of the bed the same, appearing by the same mechanism that somebody might see an angel? I'm not saying they're the same thing. I'm saying that the mechanism within physical reality that makes these things work, could they be similar? And so that's a lot to explore. And mainstream science has not jumped on board yet. And it's going to take a long time before they do. I'm just happy that he's willing to acknowledge that there could be an extraterrestrial influence, because it took him a long time just to get there. So, don't ask Michio to drink all the Kool-Aid. Just be happy he's got his ladle in the punch bowl.
Yes, I'm with you, but I do feel that he could just simply say, I don't see the evidence for it. I just don't like how abductees...
Then he's being kind of snarky.
Yeah, I don't like that sort of snide attitude toward abductees, because for some of them, it's a very traumatic experience, whether it's a real ET contact experience or something else. I don't think that we should be putting those people down. And I know that's not his intention, but that's how it comes off.
Well, I agree with you 100%. And you'll notice that a lot of people that are experiencers, that you don't see them exactly living the most fulfilled lives. They are traumatized in a lot of cases. And even if nothing traumatic happened to them, just the mind bend of having this thing that happened that is absolutely real and not being able to talk to anybody about it takes its toll. And so you have to have compassion for experiencers. But at the end of the day, not everybody's going to. And so that was a case of that.
All right. So can you tell us about the video?
Oh, the one that, the video I did with Linda that I mentioned, or the video that I sent you the link to?
No, with Linda.
Oh, so, Linda and I were talking. We did an interview in my spaceship set. It was when there was some fake papers that came out, and she kind of blew the lid off the fact that they were fake. So in the interview, I was folding them up into paper planes and throwing them while we talked about why they were bogus. But after that, we talked about the whole alien agenda. And the idea that there is a loose galactic alliance, and that they do have different agendas for Earth. And it's really, really interesting. I'm not going to recap it, but I will say anybody that wants to see it, just do a YouTube search of Ron James, Linda Moulton Howe. It'll pop up. It's like 12 minutes long. It's really cool. I think it's Ron James Explains Aliens in 15 Minutes or something like that. But It's a very interesting theory. Linda pretty much agreed with me that she thinks there's something to that, and I think that a lot of why we're here, where the aliens are concerned, is part of what I talk about there. But then we never can lose sight of the realization that if we are living in some sort of a simulation where it's being controlled by different elements that are remarkably like a computer program, then asking if there's aliens, asking if there's really any of the unexplained is kind of moot, because there simply can be just by the flip of a cosmic keyboard. So, if we're living in a matrix, it's very, very easy to make multiple realities real and multiple things true and multiple things false all at the same time. So the question as to whether or not there could be aliens in this vast galactic illusion, it's really not even a question. Of course there are. And if there aren't now, we could manifest them just by the way we perceive our surroundings. So it's like looking at the micro is, are there aliens on Jupiter? The macro is, well, is there a Jupiter? And if there is a Jupiter, why couldn't there be aliens? And who controls that? So, all the little things that we look at inside of our reality are governed by what is making our reality function. And so anything is possible, literally anything.
Avi Loeb of Harvard University, after his recent book, I read it, and he really makes a case that scientists are not forthcoming enough in how they do their research, and the more imperfect and human side of that process, and that scientists have the need to present a final form that is supposed to be, perfect, as perfect as possible. And this creates a mistrust between the scientific work, the science, and the public. Do you think ufology has a similar problem?
That's pretty interesting, because the thing I believe that makes science have that issue is academia itself. There are tenures at universities. There are grants. There is stiff competition for the ability to be published. And then there's peer review. And so scientists are basically, it's kind of the same as doctors. Doctors go through medical school, they get out and they're told what they can and cannot do. And it's very strict. And so even if they want to do something different, they can't, they risk their license. Scientists risk their credibility. They risk their income. They risk a whole lot of stuff if they do not stay in line with their peers. And so when you see a radical scientist, he's oftentimes shut down quickly or completely rejected out of hand. Rather, and this goes back all through history, Galileo, it's like, this is what happens. And so being a scientist is really hard. And being a scientist that really wants to break loose and start looking at some of that stuff is really hard too, because it's risky business. Now in ufology, nobody cares about that stuff, because they're not fighting for their scientific credibility, because they don't have any. They're not a scientist. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of PhDs in MUFON, a surprising amount of PhDs in scientific minds, but they don't have a price to pay for wanting to explore this stuff. There is no price to pay for a ufologist, unless he gets too close and ends up like Phil Snyder or something.
But
it's sort of a joke, but
No, but it's fine. You're right. I mean, Dr. Bob Davis, who's been a guest on the show, he's a great guy, scientist, and people with those credentials, they are out there. Dr. Joseph Burks, he's been intimately involved with CE5 for a very long time, although he's kind of sort of parted ways in some degree with Stephen Greer, but he's put his credentials out there, and there are scientifically trained people who are not afraid to take this on. And, even in journalism, you have someone like George Knapp, right? That's kind of an outlier, and yet he's got a great career. He hasn't
he just sent me an email. I've been going back and forth with him about this material story, which he thinks is completely bogus. So,
really? Okay.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah.
So
well,
here's,
once you put it out there, it's lambs to the slaughter. I do these reports and I do these stories and I do these shows, and you just have to. It's like you're throwing the ball, and then you're kind of looking with one eye, see where it goes, because you don't really want to know. It's really, really hard. I mean, just even me, just being a talking head, making this stuff, I get the crap beat out of me constantly, and it's just like, whoa, it's hard.
well, if all you ever did was just talk about eyewitness reports, I think you'd probably get a lot less of that, right? Because really, you're just sort of reflecting other people's stories and saying, "Oh, that's interesting. Maybe we'll do some field tests and hopefully find something." But you are talking about some more out there ideas and that's just always going to garner
It is
attention. But you know what? You have to push the envelope. FOIA requests, interviews, whatever it is. If you don't, even if you don't always hit the mark, you'll probably get some kernel of truth, or maybe even a new trajectory of investigation for yourself, which I think is important. And so, speaking of, I'm actually going to put that link in the chat on Facebook and YouTube. Everybody wants to check that out. It's an interesting. It's about an 8-minute video. So after the show,
you found it. Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can watch that. It is interesting, and it's a compelling argument that there are materials out there that have been tested and reverse engineered.
Hey, there's a couple of people in the chat, so
sure.
If you don't mind. So Karen wants to know if she can rewrite her sucky program. Karen, there's a lot of stuff out there that says exactly that. That you can rewrite your program, and they will even tell you that you're rewriting your program. Just hop on YouTube and look for stuff like that says, how can I rewrite my reality? There's meditations that will do it. There's you can literally change. Like during this pandemic, I was drinking too much, and I'm like, I need to stop that. And I started doing the affirmations and self hypnosis, and it's like. Then I was like, I didn't even want to drink. So there are tons of ways to rewrite your program, and there's all kinds of practices, especially starting in meditation and moving forward. So you absolutely can. And then when somebody else is talking about the matrix and the Akashic records and everything else, yeah, the Akashic records are a energetic record of everything, and so all of that stuff kind of ties in. I'm not saying that. It's an easy tie-in, but the record of what's going on with our lives and our past lives, which I believe is a reality, and everything else, it's all tied together. And the fact that Akashic records exist in a ethereal space, not in a bookshelf in a library somewhere, kind of points to the nature of the program. So yeah. All
right. Now, I'm going to read this quick article for you. This is from Scientific American. This came out suspiciously after Avi Loeb's book. It's called Scientists Should Admit They Bring Personal Values to Their Work. As the U.S. recoils from the divisions of recent years and the scientific community tries to rebuild trust in science, scientists may be tempted to reaffirm their neutrality. If people are to trust us again, as I have frequently heard colleagues argue, we have to be scrupulous about not allowing our values to intrude into our science. This presupposes that value neutrality is necessary for public trust and that it is possible, but available evidence suggests that neither presumption is correct. Recent research in communications has shown that people are most likely to accept a message when it is delivered by trusted messengers, teachers, for example, or religious or business leaders, local doctors and nurses. One strategy to build trust, therefore, is for scientists to build links from their laboratories, institutes, and academic departments into the communities where they live and work. That's a really interesting approach, don't you think?
I think that would be cool. The thing is how many people would really be paying attention to that? But openness and acknowledged openness would go a long way towards fostering public trust with the scientific community. And so, yeah, that would be really cool. And that kind of goes back to what you were talking about, like the paranormal labs where work is being done on this stuff that is transparent, that people can be a part of.
And that's the thing. To me, that's my Candyland. That would be, my Neverland. I think that if we can get to that place, and I do believe that it is possible, right? Because, Einstein's theory of relativity, that was just a theory at one point, and they had to prove it scientifically. And they did. And so then it was accepted. And then you can start funding laboratories. So maybe it will take that first piece of metamaterial or whatever it is that is incontrovertible, and that'll, be the key to open that door. But one can only hope. All right, so we're going to open up the Paranormal Radio app lines. You can call in and ask Ron your questions or share your close encounter story if you have one. And that's 855-472-5483 or 1-85-KGRA live. Bill Skywatcher is on standby. Wait for him to give you the cue, and we'll pull you on the air. So, Ron, outside of ufology, right? What other paranormal subject comes second to that, if possible? If you could only focus on one other, what would it be?
That's a tough one because I really like the nature of reality stuff, but I've done a lot of work in the life after death field. I was doing a similar project with the International Association for Near-Death Studies. I've done tons of interviews with everybody who's got books out about near-death experiences. But then I've also done a lot of ghost investigations. I did one of the very first documentaries on electronic voice phenomenon, which is called Dead Whisper. I think you'd see it on YouTube. I did Ghost Asylum. I've got a film I did with Amy Allen from Dead Files. It's not out yet. But the combination of what we're learning scientifically about life after death combined with the kind of stuff that happens to you when you're on a paranormal investigation, that's something that I'm working with right now with the new show, is kind of tying together all these different experiences, the scientific understanding of life after death, the experiential understanding of life after death, and the downright spooky, weird, and outrageous understanding of something still being around when you're in a haunted house or a spooky place. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, that crossover is extraordinarily intriguing. I was helping out with a documentary, and so I was doing some research, and I found an old writing by Rosemary Ellen Guiley, and she had mentioned, that perhaps EVPs could be captured Akashic records. So sort of like the holographic universe in a sense, sort of seeping through. What's your take on EVPs? Is it extraterrestrial? Is it angelic? Is it ghost? What do you think?
I talked to Rosemary about that a lot. If you could look on Amazon, one of my Bigger Questions episodes, her and I talk, and her and her husband stayed at my house once, and we worked together with Paul Davids. He did the Life After Death project based on Forey Ackerman. We all spent a night at the Forey Mansion and did EVP and stuff. I have my own theory about EVP. I call it the theory of conscious echoes. And what that is that when something happens of great trauma, in that one moment of realization, death, fear, pain, suffering, this is like this gigantic instantaneous burst of psychic energy that imprints itself in the environment. Yeah. And I think that a conscious echo is something that is an essence of the person in combination with the energy and all of the scattered sensations of that moment, that is not necessarily a trapped soul, but a actual conscious echo. It has some form of self-awareness, but it's not like you and me. It's like this energetic essence that's just made up of that moment with traces of this person. When you walk into a place with this electronic equipment, these things seem to have an ability to leave impressions on, and different types of digital media work differently. It's really funny. But I think we're picking up the conscious echoes. They're trying to communicate. That's why you get these sporadic messages. Sometimes they fit the moment, and sometimes they don't. So you might get like, well, what's your name? And it might say the name. Or you might just get something that means absolutely nothing. And you might be in there with 3 different recorders, and you pick it up on one, it doesn't show up on the other ones, which seems to indicate that there's some sort of direction of energy to these mediums. They're not just picking up what's in the air. Mm-hmm. And I've had stuff disappear off of, we do we listen and review the tapes from the digital files from the investigation. And we find stuff and we mark it down and we take a time log, and then we take that same exact file and stuff's not there anymore. So electronic voice phenomenon is pretty weird. And it's undeniable, because sometimes you get one that is just, that you just can't deny. I probably shouldn't say this, but on the way back from shooting Ghost Asylum, we went to the place where the Oklahoma City bombing happened, and we were there about midnight. And I went into the memorial, and I did an EVP session right where the car blew up. And I've never released it because I think it would be in bad taste, but we actually got a voice on there with a clear Southern accent that said it was a bomb. And it was absolutely insane. We got a baby crying, and just weird stuff that we just couldn't figure out. And it was so shocking. It's like, dude, you can't put that in your next film. It's too controversial as far as the amount of pain and stuff that happened at that site. But that really blew me away. That was the most explosive EVP I've ever caught. I mean, it literally had a Southern accent, and it's saying that, and it's like, wow, man. So, the theory of conscious echoes is something that I've been toying with for a long time, because I find it hard to believe that a fully intact human spirit can be trapped somewhere in a haunted house or whatever, and then it's trying these sporadic, crazy, unorganized ways to reach out. That would be a really scary thing to adapt as a possible outcome for you when you're dead. But the conscious echo theory, that there's some element of you combined with the tragic moment that has some sort of self-awareness, but is a very primitive being, like a tulpa.
I was going to say like a tulpa or a shadow self.
Yeah, and I talked to John Alexander about that. People know him from the UFO field, but he's also one of the founders of IANS, and he's spent his whole life studying death. And it's very interesting what he's done. The rituals of all kinds of different native modalities and the ceremonies around death. And, he kind of agrees with me that the tulpa idea, the conscious echo idea, might have something to it when it comes to EVP. Sorry for the long answer. But
no, that's great. So what about extraterrestrial interception of communication? Do you think that's a possibility? Is there evidence for that?
Well, I think that, are you talking about us in actually
like an EMF, like a K2 accidentally picking up communications of an extraterrestrial, let's say?
I think that that if they were communicating in any way that even resembles our technology, then SETI would be picking stuff up all day long. I think that there's probably a whole other quantum communication technique that comes along once you reach a certain level of technology, and that's why we're not picking up FM radio waves, and we're not seeing "I Love Lucy" from Mars. So I'm not sure that we're picking anything up in that way, because it just doesn't make sense to me that we're not picking it up in other places. And so, like, EVP is a way of picking up aliens talking. I don't know if the two fold, because if there's extraterrestrial communication happening, it's consistent. It's happening all the time. And if there's as many species in the universe as we think there are, then the universe should be full of these waves, and they should be picked up routinely, and they should make a lot more sense. I think that there's just higher technology for communicating that we're unaware of, and that's why we're not picking up this stuff.
So most investigators would say their ghosts would be a loop, right? Like a record player. It's kind of stuck, and it's a residual, and it's not necessarily conscious. It's like a holographic reflection of once was, maybe a traumatic moment. Then you have a spirit or a poltergeist that is conscious. And so what you're saying is that maybe it's something in between.
I think it's something in between. And the reason I say that is because you have incidences of EVPs where you are being given an answer to a question. So a loop, an energy caught in a time loop, just repeating itself over and over again, you would pick up repetition, but you wouldn't pick up specific answers. And so, and then when the idea that you have a complete spirit that is intact with the memories of that human, you would think that that still has the ability to make these imprints on electronic media. You would think that if that's the source of it, then EVPs would make a lot more sense, because EVPs are generally pretty senseless. You never say, "Hey, what's your name?" "Oh, my name's Judy." What happened to you here is things we just like to ask. Even if you get an answer that resembles a question, it's very sporadic. It's like killed, died. So a fully conscious remnant of somebody is not going to deliver messages that are that scattered and sporadic. And a looped entity caught in a time loop is only going to repeat itself, and so you're never going to get a specific answer. So that's why I lean towards something in between. It's something I've thought about a lot.
What about phone calls from the dead?
Well, Alexander Graham Bell left the designs for a spirit communication device. He was working on it for a really long time, and what a lot of people don't know is that those notes and his documents were spirited away, ended up at RCA. And so will we have a telephone to the dead? Maybe. But I think at the end of the day, when you're done here, you're done. It's not like you're hanging out somewhere else waiting to talk to your grandson. You're otherwise occupied.
But there are stories of people getting a phone call. They pick up the phone and it's their deceased father or mother, and they'll say something sort of, where are you? Or, why isn't, what time is dinner or something like that, as if they're confused and don't realize that they're dead. And then the phone goes dead and the phone call is over. That to me sounds like something that is lost. And that to me means there's a spirit that is conscious. It's just confused.
Well, that's possible, but how confused does it have to be to pick up the phone and call you? I think that there are a lot of mechanisms made available to people that have crossed over to reach out to their loved ones and acknowledge to them that they're still here. I've lost a couple of friends, and I've had uncanny experiences that just absolutely assured me that person has survived her death, and moved on. And I think that spirits probably have available to them different ways to resolve things with loved ones. If the call could be like what you talked about, very scattered and confused. But you also hear stories about these calls where the person just picks up the phone, they don't even hear anything, but they just know that person on the other side is them. They can feel it. And so there's a lot of ways for deceased people to reach out back to the living, especially in the short period after their death, where they can give that reassurance. And I think those experiences are tailored to the ability of the recipient to grasp it. So in other words, if you die and your husband's 85, you're not going to appear in his room as a ghost and give him a heart attack. You've got to tailor your acknowledgement back to him in a way that he's going to be able to handle. And the phone calls from the dead are one of many different types of phenomena where people are brought into contact and have some sort of knowing that they're communicating with that person, and they're being reassured in almost every case.
In regard to funding and studying the paranormal, again, now with a K2 meter or just a regular recorder, analog, digital, if we go and we investigate a site where there's known paranormal occurrences, whether it's a poltergeist report or a witness spirit, walking the night, now we can go in there with those meters and those recorders and hope that whatever we're picking up that we don't hear with our ears, the sound waves of just hertz. If we encase that meter to block out AM, FM, electromagnetic frequencies, right? The hope would be then to still pick up a voice from a ghost, right? And this would be considered a control. But, I've always found that kind of problematic because we don't know how that transcommunication is actually occurring.
Yeah.
And so whatever that energy is, which is unidentified at this point, it's communicating, and perhaps it is manipulating energy and metamorphizing into AM or FM, right? And using that medium to get its voice across. But that's not where it started from, right? I mean, this isn't a ghost with like an AM, broadcaster built into it. So if you block that out, then you might actually lose the communication. So as far as funding goes, I always imagine it would be wonderful, like the Palmer House or something, to put a huge Faraday cage around it, right? Or just someone's home or a haunted abandoned house, something smaller that would block out AM, FM electromagnetic frequencies from the outer world, but within, that 100, 200 square yard area, you could pick up, whatever energy or sounds are coming or projected from that ghost. Is that a crazy idea of mine? Or do you think there's some validity to that?
Well, I think that you've kind of hit the nail on the head with where are they getting the energy to leave these impressions. So if you look at how, sound, believe it or not, is a material thing. It is a physical thing. It has volume, and their ability to leave these impressions. I think if you've got the ability to leave an impression on a piece of electronic media, then you have to harness some sort of energy from somewhere to actually do it. And that could come from electromagnetic energy in the room. It could come from radio frequencies. It could come from a lot of stuff. And maybe when you're a spirit, you're seeing a whole spectrum of energy, and you're grabbing the lightning and slinging it with your message towards those digital receptors on that device. And so it would be interesting to see if EVP completely diminishes in that kind of environment, and I suspect that it would, because I think that without the fuel, they can't drive the car. And I think that the fuel comes from all sorts of different energy spectrums that are available to them, so they're going to use what they'll use. I've seen batteries be drained, and I'm sure you have too, and really strong EVPs, but at the same time, the cameras aren't working anymore because that energy from the batteries has somehow been tapped. So maybe when you're disembodied to that point, and you see the whole spectrum of available energies, and then you're utilizing them in ways that we don't really comprehend right now, but it would be, I think that if you cut off all outside energetic influences, you would not get really good EVPs.
That's a good point. So even the large Faraday cage or what have you wouldn't do the job, because you're sort of taking away the fuel. The medium.
That is what I think is going on, because when if people watch Dead Whisper, there's a guy in there, Michael. It's been so long since I made the film, I can't remember his last name. Oh, Michael Esposito. This guy is the godfather of EVP science. He's so good. And he was the one that did the EVPs in Dead Whisper. You can find that film on YouTube for free, I think. And Ghost Asylum is another one where we used the Oculus. You remember that thing?
No, I don't remember the Oculus.
The Oculus was an attempt at a spirit communication device. You ask a question, and then the Oculus supposedly gives you the answer.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I don't know if those things are still around. I haven't done a ghost show in a long time, but
well, in the Estes method of the spirit box seems to be what's trending right now, and I'd like that idea, because you're cutting your own senses off. So you're not influenced in any way, kind of like you're putting yourself into a more hypnotic state. So whatever the spirit box, whatever you hear, you speak it out, right? But you didn't know what question was being asked at all. You're completely cut off from your partner. And so for me, that's more validating of a real phenomena, because you're not feeding into your own dialogue or projecting your own ideas onto a response.
That's probably true, but I think you're also losing a lot of the things that make this stuff work. So I'm not up to speed on that to the point where I can talk about it with any kind of knowledge. I'm going to actually do some research on it myself.
Yeah, I think it's fun. I haven't done it myself, but it's fun to hear people talk about it and to observe it.
And then we're back to the times of traditional mediums, and we're back to, telepathy and ESP and all of the kind of things that were going on, back when Edgar Cayce was around. So all of this stuff, the way it intertwines and the way it all comes back to some of the very same core things across all spectrums, across the alien question, across the life after death question, the nature reality question, anything else that we don't have a full explanation for. What we find is that the closer we get to the hint of an explanation, the more intertwined these things are.
Right. Spiritualism is kind of making a comeback in its own right. And we're embracing all these new age ideas and incorporating them into mainstream paranormal research. And I think that's okay. I think that's totally cool. And because part of all this, it's fun, right? It's the exploration. It's the journey.
I'm so glad. Yeah, I'm so glad you touched on that. I mean,
Yeah.
For me personally, the idea that I get to do this is just like, wow. Every day I wake up and I decide what I'm going to do, what I'm going to explore. I'm just lucky enough to be supported by this kind of work. And I know there's a lot of people out there doing what I do that aren't able to find that yet. And I wish everybody to just get to the point in your life where you can wake up and be creative and explore and do stuff that's fun. I'm working on a show right now. As soon as we're going to go into production, as soon as COVID's done, it's going to be like I'm the paranormal Anthony Bourdain. I'm going to go around different places. Like I'm going to head up to Snowflake and I'm going to hang out with Travis. We're going to go to where it happened. Then we're going to go to his favorite restaurant, and then we're going to break out the guitars and we're going to jam because Travis is a guitar player. And I can't wait to do that show. I have no idea how I'm going to make money on it or where I'm going to sell it, but I don't even care. It's like, get to do that stuff. We all get to do that stuff. That is just like it's just fun.
Yeah. Well, like the Estes method with the spirit box, like it's getting into a more meditative state, right? And that's what spiritualism was, and that's, to me, that's part of that seeking, that trying to get in touch with source or what have you. But there's a playful aspect to all that, and I think you're right. Like it's fun. That's where everybody listening now. It's fun, even though you're asking the big questions, and that it's stimulating intellectually. It's exciting spiritually, but it's also just good fun. And I love the community of people that I get to meet and have conversations with. By and large, everybody is very, very open-minded, and that's refreshing to know there's a community like that.
Well, there has to be. When you're looking at stuff that has absolutely no explanation, and there's a lot of people trying to get the answers, and there's a lot of different things out there, you have to be open-minded. You have to be. Too many people in ufology are attached to their own specific beliefs to the point that it tears the field apart, and that's been ufology's curse from day one. Yeah. It's, you've got, well, I think cattle mutilations are aliens. Well, I think they're government. Go to the mat over that one, guys. And it's been very counterproductive.
All right, we're going to bring in our first caller now, Karen from Minnesota. We're on with Ron. Welcome to Paranormal Now.
Holy moly. Hey, guys.
Hey, Karen.
I don't even know what to say anymore because I've been doing paranormal investigations for several years in my life. I've been a MUFON member since 2007, and I saw my first triangle. So there's a lot that's been going on in my life, and that's just in lowly in Minnesota. And but gentlemen, I'm really kind of concerned about what I've been seeing in the how can I say it? Military pictures and things like that, and I'm like going, wow, those are some really cool spaceships. But then I'm like going, those are some cool spaceships, but I'm getting scared about what's in those ships. It's not necessarily the Tic Tacs, but the other ones that look kind of more like devil seed pods is what I'm kind of
almost like a diamond.
Yeah, they're I'm like going, what the heck is that? And I go, yeah, that looks like a sports car, but you know what? That's really super cool, but I don't know. And the thing is I've always been in my entire life, I've been a person that's been into science. I have been digging in, I've digged in dirt today. I have been collecting fossils, rocks, agates, this, that, you name it. I've just been one of those type of crazy kind of girls. But the thing is that the more I know about what's going on, the more I'm kind of like, want to help the planet, but I don't know if I can help the planet anymore because I don't know where the planet's going.
All right, so are you...
You're kind of getting where I'm coming from. It's like, are we beyond what we can do anymore for the planet at this point?
Okay, that's a good question, Ron.
I puzzle about that all the time.
Are we at the doomsday precipice where it's like you can process all the plastic you want and save it, but it's not gonna. The glaciers are coming down. Everything. The volcanoes are going, and then we got these alien seed pods that look like the devil, blah. And I'm like going, I don't know. Are we at the extinction level event?
Well, Karen,
and you don't want to say, and honestly, you don't want to say it because you don't want to panic people.
No, of course, and that's the thing is that there's the fear, Karen, of the unknown. Thank you so much for the call.
Honestly,
we have to switch over because we have 2 minutes left of the show.
Yeah, you just go and do what you need to do, but I'm going to tell you I don't think it can I don't think there's any preparation for it, really.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, let's ask Ron. Thank you so much, Karen. Ron, so what do you think? Are we afraid? Do we need to be prepared?
I think that we just need to do everything we can do to, on an individual level, make this a world we do want to sign off on. And if we're not able to pull it off in this particular instance of reality, then we have a much better chance of experiencing the reality we do want to sign off on when we go on to the next one. That may be the whole purpose of what this is all about, is what do you support? What kind of world do you support? And the world that you support, maybe you get a little closer to having it the next time. And so don't let the external rule what you are inside. And that could be one of the biggest lessons we have right here.
All right, and apply that to all things you do, including research.
Everything, yep.
To everything. All right, if you want to find out more about Ron, MUFONtelevision.com/spacetime. Anywhere else you want people to go, Ron?
I've got my YouTube channel, but MUFON Television is where I've been putting most of my efforts, and it's a subscription-based channel. There's a lot of stuff there that's free. You can get it when you sign up for MUFON, and we're hoping to get more and more people to sign up, and that's great. We want to just keep creating more and more original shows for people like this audience that are underserved by the mainstream. All
right, Ron, thank you so much. I really enjoyed our conversation tonight. And
it's pretty awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, I'd love to have you on again if you have anything else to share, which I know you do because you cover it all. So any new updates, please let me know. I'd love to share that with our audience as well. All right, thank you all for hanging out with us tonight on Paranormal Now on KGRA Radio. If you want to find out more about this program and others, the best in alternative talk radio, that's KGRADB.com. Special thanks to KGRA Head of Operations Eric Brager and tonight's producer Bill Skywatcher. Until next time, everyone, live in the mystery.